This episode of Mike's on Mike was recorded prior to former City Councilwoman Randy DeFore withdrawing her name for consideration for the position of General Counsel. Now sit back and relax and enjoy this edition of Mike's on Mike featuring City Councilman Matt Carlucci.
Welcome to Mike's on Mike, a conversation about politics, government, and Jacksonville. Join 50-year opinion leaders Mike Hightower, Mike Tolbert, and award-winning broadcaster and longtime political observer Mike Miller.
Welcome once again to another episode of Mike's on Mike. I'm Mike Miller, along with my partners in crime, Mike Tolbert and Mike Hightower, and we're very fortunate to have with us today City Councilman Matt Carlucci. It's great. All of us have known Matt for many, many years, but I thought what I would do is just as a short introduction, and I got this off the website, by the way.
Don't read the whole thing, just cut it.
Don't worry, I edited out all the bad stuff. Matt has begun his fifth term as Jacksonville City Council member, having represented Act Group 4 between 1987 and 1994, and then 2019 to present. He was also councilman for District 5 from 1999 to 03. In 2001, he served as council president. He was awarded the Jacksonville Historical Society's Preservation Milestone Award for saving Jacksonville's most extraordinary corner, the Dolores Street Trio, which we're going to get into a little bit later on. Founder and owner of Matthew F. Carlucci Insurance Agency, and Matt has served as State Farm's clients for more than 4 decades. He has authored and championed the 1992 legislation to create the Jacksonville Ethics Commission, which is more important today than ever before, I think.
Thank you.
And for the efforts, was awarded the Claude Yates Award for Outstanding City Council Member on the 25th anniversary of Jacksonville's consolidated government. In 2012, Rick Scott, then our governor, appointed Matt to the Florida Commission on Ethics, where he served 5 consecutive years and led efforts to strengthen state election laws. He's a staunch supporter of parks and resilience efforts. Matt chaired the council's Special Committee on Resilience, later served as chair of the Environmental Planning Subcommittee with the goal of addressing the city's ability to swiftly recover from severe weather and flooding, and was the unofficial mayor of the city of San Marco for the last 175 years. Matt, welcome to Mike's on Mike. It's great to have you here.
But the flooding was not his fault.
No, it was not.
Let me tell you the funniest story that happened. So I worked so hard to get the land and pump station put into place, because that's a park and mamas and their families, and they take their kids there to swing, and they love it, but it's a bad flooding area, right? So I make the announcement, look, you won't have to worry about flooding no more. We got a pump station there. Unless there's a hurricane, you're going to be fine. First frog strangler we have. The place just floods like crazy, and I call my good buddy Allen Mosley, who was, I think, the public works director at the time, and he just flew over to Landon Avenue, San Marco Boulevard, and found out what happened was the grates there had filled up with all those little cones that come off the magnolia trees.
Oh, gosh.
So he started pulling those things out, and he happened to have a potato rake in the back of his truck. and the neighborhood was saved, all by one person with a potato rake, Allen Mosley, and he never took that potato rake out ever again.
I think we should give him a ceremonial one.
I'm so glad you said that about Magnolia. I hate Magnolia Street because the leaves never...
They're so dirty.
Oh,
Such
God, I
dirty
hate
trees.
them.
We had one.
Yeah.
I hate it, too.
Can I change the subject?
If you must.
If you gotta. By the way, he didn't say, what's really important to a lot of us is who his dad was.
That's what I was getting into. Thank you.
Go. Thank you.
Pick it up, buddy.
I knew your dad,
Yes.
And I worked with your dad.
and he was from Miami, as I recall.
Well, actually, he grew up in the Bronx, and as his daddy
That's
began
kinda
It's
like
about
my-
the same thing.
Like, this is what Italians do, okay? They grow up in the Bronx, and then if the dad makes a little money, then they go to Long Island. And then after they make a little more money there, then they go down to Miami so they can shrink and smoke their cigars. So my dad went to Miami high school, and but up in New Jersey, in New York in the Bronx, he went to a Catholic school of some sort that one of the nuns there just couldn't stand him. And but anyway.
I thought nuns liked everybody.
Well, let me ask you this, Matt. you've been on that council now for 100 years, it seems like, and thank God you have.
Yes.
But in following in your daddy's footsteps, that had to be something special for you.
Well, it was special, but it was hard because there's only one Joe Carlucci for people that knew him.
Yeah.
And I could not replicate my dad because I had a lot of my mom in me too. So there's times when my inner Joe Carlucci comes out, and
What is that like?
well, it's not fun for the other person. It's like taking somebody to the painful truth. My dad some people used to say to my dad, Joe, what's the difference between your son and you? And my dad would say, well, I just tell people to go to hell. Matthew tells them to go to hell, but makes them look forward to the trip. So,
Well, you know,
but and I don't want to get off to a rough start there, but Dad was one of a kind. The main things that I wanted to do when my father passed away, I was a State Farm agent on my own way down in Mandarin. I moved back up to his office and was able to keep a small percentage of his business and brought mine back with me from Mandarin. But I didn't change the sign. I didn't take his name off the office for a while. It's a difficult transition because he was bigger than life to so many people and to his customers, and so I kept a lot of his plaques up, and I made sure that I honored him and honored his memory, and tried to emulate at least his values in my own sort of a way. So I always told people I could never fill his shoes, but in his footsteps, but if I could at least walk kind of beside him. That would be good enough for me, and Joseph, he'll be his own man. My son, who's on the council with me, and so, but there's so many funny stories on Dad, and I have a few funny ones as well, and I got a feeling my son's going to have his fair share. But I tell you, the one thing that I always remember about my father. And that I honor him with. A lot of times he could be a curmudgeon.
Really?
Yes, really, he could. And but Dad always at least felt if he was doing the right thing, he gave it everything he had, and he was prophetic in so many ways. He could smell a rat, 3 miles away. And a little bit later down the road, that political rat would be exposed.
Well, let me interrupt you for a minute. I met your dad when I was a young reporter with the Times Union covering new Consolidation.
Right.
And he had a file cabinet, didn't he?
Still does.
Yeah. and it would not be unusual for him to call me. I stayed up later back then. Called me around 11 o'clock at night or so.
Yeah.
And asked me if I wanted to know such and such about so-and-so because he'd just gone through his files.
Yeah.
And he pulled out information. Of course, I always did. It was good stuff.
Yeah. Often
it was about somebody, a mayor chancellor, who just appointed to a board or an authority, and it turned out that person wasn't exactly who they said they were.
Yeah.
and appointments got. But that's one of the things I remember about him is he was always dogged about stuff.
Oh yeah. Speaking of dogged, he had lots of audits he went through, and you could always find they were dog-eared all the way through, where he found something that he wanted to look into, and but Dad, the thing I was always very proud of Dad, and that when he was the first Rules Committee chairman
After Consolidation.
and of Consolidation, and he also in large part wrote the rules of the council by researching all around the country their council rules. And, of course, he had a very good cast of committee members on rules. That was the best council that we ever had. That first council was, and he won the first Claude J. Yates Award, which when I won that 25 years later, I mean, I could almost tear up over that. And he won the first the J.J. Daniels Award. Those were the two coveted awards back then, and he won both of those the first year of the council's existence, and he won the J.J. Roberts the second year. I don't know who won the Claude J. Yates Award. It might have been Linwood Roberts. I'm not sure.
Well, just for, as you all know, then he came over to Tallahassee, and that same, when I say took no prisoners, Joe always said what was on his mind, and he called balls and strikes, and he shook up everything. But I can tell you, when it got to be on the key things, people would walk over to his desk and go, "Joe, what are you going to do?" Because paraphrase, if you're right, you're never wrong if you're right.
Let's talk about the council now.
Yeah.
Okay.
What the hell is going on?
Well, let's see.
You want to be a little stronger?
You know what?
Don't hold back.
Let's connect the dots.
He's been waiting to say this for weeks.
Let's connect the dots.
Okay.
We're talking about that first city council.
Mm-hmm.
There was a clique on that city council. It was Linwood Roberts and Jake Godbold and Johnny Sanders and Mary Singleton and sometimes Sally Mathis and sometimes Walter Williams. There's a clique on this city council currently.
Yes.
And but back then, the clique was not there to control or exact revenge on people. It was there to try to strike a balance.
Right.
And that's what their goal was. I mean, what's going on down there now?
Well, there is a clique on the council, and look, a lot of these people are all my friends, but there's a clique, and they all are in lockstep. And it makes it difficult because we have a new council now who's got some very bright players on it. And I have great hopes for some of these, new young council members, and some of them are older. My age. No, ain't nobody my age on there except for Boylan. But there's new council members on there, and I sometimes am concerned of the examples that they're watching, and how sometimes legislation seems to be choreographed into a meeting when nobody else knows about it, and it passes. And there's not even any debate sometimes. And at the council back in many years ago, councils that I was on, sometimes there were cliques. There's natural allies. I call it allies. I have a few allies on the council, but they don't always vote the way I do, but I always respect where they're coming from, because I know they're not taking their orders from anywhere but their conscience. But sometimes I'm not sure where the orders are coming from, and when a bill comes up that I think is questionable, and I speak to it, and nobody debates it, and they just pass it through in lockstep, I'm like, what is that about?
Well, Nate Monroe just wrote a column about the funding for some nonprofits.
Yes.
That as I recall, in committee legislation that hadn't been introduced got passed.
Yes.
I mean, it was brand new.
And the problem, they did that on wrap-up day. I should have known better than to not stay there all day on wrap-up day, because I know what happens towards the end of wrap-up day. Everybody's tired, everybody leaves, and that's when things like this happen.
Same in Tallahassee.
And so I will just tell you that some of that stuff came out of nowhere. I don't know how much debate there was on it. I'll have to go pull the tapes and find out. But I will tell you, I think they all passed unanimously. I never heard anything about money going to the White Harvest Farms, which the Clara White Mission, which I hope is doing well, but that's sole sourcing. Then money for Firewatch, that's being sole sourced. And that money goes to the not-for-profit that Nick Hallen, Finance Committee Chairman, is the head of, but he had another council make the motion to include $90,000 for that. I didn't know that was coming.
Well,
wait a minute. Then there was over $1 million for a charter school. Mm-hmm. Now, I think some of that had to do with some contaminated soil, so I don't want to point a finger of blame at anybody quite yet until I do my research on it to see if the city really owed that money or not. But nobody knew it was coming up. And this stuff just comes out of nowhere, and everybody's in lockstep, and it's all a part of the clique.
And what
lack of transparency.
What we need to point out as well is those organizations that didn't go through the Public Service Grant Commission like they're supposed to, wasn't introduced in legislation traditionally like it should have, but it was also headed by 2 sitting council members.
Yes.
So and now I understand that neither of the 2 council members were involved in any discussion. They didn't vote for him, but your influence is still going to be there. There's no question.
I mean, you're
It's
sitting.
called BS.
Yeah, no. I mean, they say I recuse myself. Well, everybody, of course, they're going to. They have to do that.
Sure.
But there's no. Listen, what we're the elephant in the room is that clique all use the same consultants. That's where it all comes back to.
Most of them then, and some of the ones that are falling into that clique, as I see it, and as I'm concerned about it, may not have used Tim Baker. But anyway, you know what? They're my colleagues. I want to work with them. But I just think that debate is important. And I
transparency, too.
Transparency. This is going to come before the council in case you want to show up. So, you know, it's kind of like a breath of fresh air over in the mayor's office because they do transparency to a fault, you know, in my view. But on the council, we've seen a lack of it, and we've seen, leadership engaged in more debate sometimes than what, chair people or council presidents are supposed to. And I hate to say that because I don't want to be critical, but I think it needs to be said. I've been around a long time. Doesn't mean I'm perfect. I am not a perfect guy. But I do know rules. And if you go to page 42 of the council rules, it explicitly says that council presidents and chairmen do not debate. Their job is to run a fair process of a committee or of a council meeting. They open it up. They get the roll called, they adjourn it, and only at certain times when a debate is completely through, if the council president wants to engage, generally what they should do is ask if the rest of the council is okay if I add a few words in.
Well,
Wait, let me finish. And so the council most always, well, I don't mean to, but the council will say, sure. And then he switches seats with the vice president. And sometimes he or she, the council president, will have the last few words, and then you vote. But that's not what's happening right now.
So what's going on with Randy DeFore? The mayor has nominated her for general counsel. Mm-hmm. She cleared a committee. She's a highly qualified lawyer, former city council person. What's going on there?
There are, I guess, people who I will just say this. She is really qualified in a big way. She has had many lawyers underneath her in the position of general counsel for top 500 companies in the country. And I've never found her to be hard to work with at all. Now, I will tell you this, when she believes she's right, she sticks to it. Well, don't we all want our council members to think independently? And, yeah, sometimes you got to apply a little grease, and you got to give here and you got to give there. But she was a big ally of mine. We didn't always agree, but I always knew if we disagreed, it was because she believed in it from the bottom of her heart, because she loved Jacksonville, and her family went back so many years, all the way to the Barnett Bank.
Exactly.
In Jacksonville. And she's a wonderful woman, easy to work with. Some people say she doesn't have the right temperament. Well, if you don't, I can tell you plenty of people on the council that don't have the right damn temperament. I may be one of them. I don't know, but I'm just saying she has the right ability and the qualifications. And so they come up with this big meeting the other day to come up with all these questions that they feel needs to be addressed in the opinion that's going to the State Ethics Commission. And now they want to go ahead and vote on her before they get the opinion.
Because they don't want to hear the opinion.
They don't want to do it.
They don't want to be taken to the church of the painful truth is what I call it. And I'll tell you something else. That's a waste of taxpayer money on the state level.
Of course it is.
The people that work for the Florida Ethics Commission, and I've been there 5 years, and having been there, those staff people, the attorneys, they work hard. They work hard, and they work for free many times at night. They don't charge the overtime to try to get it right. And now their job is being taken up with this opinion ask that actually Donna was the one who should be asking for the opinion, not the legislative body, the administrative body, and her opinion encompassed everything that the council came up with. It's just to waste time, in my opinion.
Is she going to pass or is she going to fail?
I think if people on the council will think in their heart of hearts and in their guts and spend time talking with her honestly, and then I think she gets the votes. But I think if people just follow follow the leader, so to speak. I'm not sure that's the right word to use, but then she may struggle. But here's the other thing: who wants to apply for general counsel if you know you're going to go through that kind of treatment?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and I just think it's wrong.
Well, you didn't have many applicants to begin with.
Well, we had I think 6.
Yeah, but I mean, it's.
But that appointment, we confirmed the appointment, but, and you know this, Mike, and Mike, talking to 3 mics. In my last campaign, I had 3 mats, but anyway, 3 mics. You know as well as I do that every mayor has been given discretion on who they wanted for general counsel, and doesn't mean you should just roll over and rubber stamp somebody who's really got big question marks. There's no question marks there. What there is excellence. We have an excellent appointment in front of us, and I do think we should wait for the council or for the Florida Commission on Ethics opinion, just to make sure there's something we're not thinking about, that they've had a chance to vet, but we should not vote before that process happens. And if we do, we're acting in bad faith with the state of Florida. That's not a good place for a city council to be.
Well, as you can see on our show, it's observations, insight, perceptions, and 2 of those are observations, perceptions. And I can tell you, Mike and I have both been doing politics here for over 53 years. The perception out there, this is nothing but payback. This is because
I think the mayor used the term punishment politics, and that's really what
that's really it is. She opposed the former administration. She stood tall, and she both that and on Lot J, she called balls and strikes. They went after her within 6 weeks after she got sworn in, because on the JEA issue, when it started, when it hit the fan, all she asked one question. If you go back and ask, she asked one question: if we sell JEA, what happens to the water? And all hell broke loose.
That's right.
And they never took their knee or their boot off her neck for 4 years. Yeah. And this is nothing but payback.
Well, she's had a hard time getting projects moved up the CIP, because she stood her ground, and she's a district council person. It's tougher for a district council person than it is for at large. She's got projects she wants to move ahead. She finally got a project moved ahead, and with a drainage project on Riverside Boulevard that actually Wayne Weaver had called me about, and I know it's bad because there's 4 blocks on Riverside Boulevard that have no drainage. Mm-hmm. So there's a drainage study that needs to be done. It was supposed to be done 5 years out from now. We finally got it moved up to next year. I just think that when you got to look at qualifications and her ability to communicate with people, I'm not seeing any problems on that. And I think some of the council members, I won't say who, but hearing from the other side of the floor, so to speak, at first were just fine with Randy DeFore, and then suddenly they had a change of direction over a week or two. And
how do you think the mayor's doing?
I think the mayor's doing a great job.
What are her challenges?
Getting 10 votes and 13 votes on the city council. But she's popular, and I got to tell you, she knows this, but look, she's still trying to put together a team, and sometimes that takes, trying certain players and maybe getting another player to move to this, but she's going to the people, and that's where her strength is. And
that's what
is with the people, and so I think I think it was Ronald Reagan who would take things sometimes to the people and tell them contact your congressperson.
Exactly
well, she's a good communicator, and she's doing that.
She's an outstanding communicator.
She it seems like, and you hit it on the head, she's got to get the people around her who can be effective.
That's right.
And it seems to me, from observer, that she's got some good people, but a lot of them don't know what they don't know. Well, this is brand new to them.
Yeah, they're wading into uncharted waters for a lot of them, and they all have, I think, great. They will grow into these jobs, but it may take a while. It takes everybody a while to grow into their position. But these are people that care truly about the city, not what's in it for them. They're really doing what they can for the community. And I could start naming names, but I don't want to do that because there's too many of them to name. But I think she's got an outstanding administration, and it just needs a little more seasoning, as anybody would when they're put into a new job. Look, how many council meetings has she had so far since she's been mayor? 3, 4?
Yeah.
Get baptized by fire, have a hurricane and a mass shooting all within like a week.
Yeah. And now, did that and handled it with incredible, with dignity, but she did it in a way that calmed everyone down. I mean, it was, there was order.
Listen, her biggest asset, and I told this to some candidates when they were running for mayor, is she is the most compelling speaker I've seen in a long time, and that's to her advantage, and I think you'll continue to see her use that advantage. But she's strategic though too, and so we'll just have to see how things unfold in the next 6 months, a year. But I can take back, and I won't mention names, but there's other mayors that struggled their first 2 years, first 2 years. The one who really did the most in the shortest period of time was Tommy Azzurri. And I think what he did was he used up all his political capital, and It was all spent, and he couldn't get through to his next term. But I think she's going to be an excellent mayor because she cares about the damn people, and that's what people have been wanting for so long.
Yeah, we're going to be getting into these next issues here in greater depth in future podcasts. But one of the things that I wonder about is considering the, if you will, the personality of the city council now, the overall personality, that 19th person. How is the council and the mayor's office going to handle what needs to get addressed when it comes to the stadium, when it comes to the jail being moved? All of these very expensive and very high-profile programs are going to be facing that city council over the next 2 years. How are they going to deal with this?
Well, I don't think the jail will confront us in the next 2 years. A lot of people like to talk about how it's got to be moved, and if anything needs to be moved is that old police memorial building, which has been leaking since it was built.
Yep.
But that, I mean, look, that it'd be better to do some maintenance and to make sure we're using best practices at the jail. I'm not saying they're not, but I'm just saying instead of just buying a new jail or building a new jail, which is going to take a long time because nobody wants a jail in their neighborhood, and where are you going to put it? and it'll hurt economic development if you put it over here. It's too close to a neighborhood if you put it over here. Look,
too far away from the court system.
That's
it over there.
Yeah.
Right.
The stadium is one of the biggest ones that's going to come about, and I think that she will do a good job with that, and we'll find a way that we can. And I think she's put together a good team, and so hopefully the council will put aside the politics of the day and allow her to do the negotiating that she campaigned on, and let her do that.
Right.
And I think we'll get through that. There's other big ask out there. The University of Florida, that's another big ask. I think they're asking for another $10 million, $20 million.
At least 20.
And the Dolores Street Trio, that's a big ask. But that Dolores Street Trio, I mean, it's now or never, in my opinion, for that. I mean, look, we're talking about jail is antiquated after 30 some odd years. Well, the Dolores Street Trio has been here for over 100 years. And that has so much to do with identifying Jacksonville, who we are, and revitalizing the actual core. You know, when we talk about downtown, I like to think of the core. That's kind of like from Berkman Plaza down to the Times Union Performing Arts Center, or whatever it's called now, and from the North Bank back to James Weldon Johnson. That's the walkable core. The ball field is now in the downtown boundaries, and so is Brooklyn. But to me, you've got to show the life coming from that core, and don't let the core become the whole of a donut. And there's some good things going on in the core, and the trio would go a long ways towards reinforcing Jacksonville's sense of place, sense of pride of our community. Some people may not know about it, but once they hear about it and understand it, and why it's so valuable, not only to our history, and not only to putting Jacksonville back on the map after the Great Fire, they become, wow, we need to take care of these three buildings. Plus, they're all architectural gems.
Well, but Matt, you said it's now or never, and I truly believe that. And I got a couple of questions. One is, does the developer have the resources to make it happen? And the second is, if he doesn't, does the city have the money to make it happen for him?
Well, I think the developer needs a little more capital. I don't think he has all the capital in his back pocket. I will say this, though. He's owned that property for a long time. And he has spent a lot of capital out of his own pocket just keeping that place up. And you can't discount that from Steve Atkins. His whole heart and soul is into this.
Didn't he do the Barnett Bank?
Yeah,
yes,
he sure did.
He did the Barnett. Go take a look at that.
Yeah,
it's fabulous.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
He needs a bridge loan, and the city generally does not want to be a bank loaning money, but he's got this loan backed up by the construction company who really wants this job because it's so high profile. Turner Construction, I don't know who they are, but I guess I'll meet some of them at some time maybe. But he needs a little help. But I got to tell you, I don't know anybody else that's tried to take this on and was successful. And this is, if it was easy, anybody would do it.
Absolutely.
But this is the most difficult restoration project in Jacksonville, Florida. And dadgum, if we're going, and this is going to be a little bigger ask while we're talking about it, than what your normal downtown development might be asking for, besides rev grants and maybe a loan, a completion loan. You complete the work and you don't have to pay us back. They're going to want a little bit more than that. But look, if somebody has got a problem with that, then they need to take that policy that they have problems with and bring it with them to the Jaguar negotiations when it comes before the council. Because I guarantee you, it's going to be a lot more going to that development. It'll make the Dolores Street Trio look like nothing.
That's right. Well, there were a lot of people that said the Barnett Bank building was not feasible and it wouldn't work, and it's unbelievable what's going on.
Well, when I saw it before it started beginning with all the holes that were down to every middle floor so they could throw trash and debris down the holes that go down to the bottom. I just, how in the world are you going to do this, Steve? Let me tell you, Steve, he comes from a family that loves Jacksonville, multi-generational. And I'm not saying that makes him any better than anybody else or anybody that's multi-generational better, but I do say that it gives them maybe deeper roots of love. It gives them a feeling of more at stake, a feeling of wanting to do something for a community that's done so much for your family, your parents, your grandparents, and so forth. And he's one of those kind of people. By the way, that's who Randy DeFore is, as I had mentioned earlier. And so I'm going to tell you a funny story. So Lot J, 7 people didn't vote for Lot J. Okay?
The Magnificent Seven.
The Magnificent Seven. All Magnificent Seven had season tickets for the Jaguars. All the others did not. And that was told to me by somebody that I won't repeat his name, but who would know. And he said, I don't understand why that would be. I said, I'll explain it to you. Look, I said, Mr. So-and-so, the deal was not a good deal. It wasn't. It didn't go through the DIA, no community meetings. It was a lousy deal. And the people that owned season tickets, I had season tickets. Sometimes I go to the game, sometimes I don't. I buy them like I'm saluting my city, the great city of Jacksonville. And we are a great city. But we got a great future in front of us if we just think to ourselves and do the right thing as we see fit.
And let's be consistent on as we do, as you go through the deals, and that's how cities build. But let's be consistent on how we negotiate and how the deals are done. It not depend on who your friend is or what clique you're with or the clique's not with.
Or anybody tells you what to do.
Well, if Lot J had gone through DIA, it could have been a different, could have been different. But I think what this new stadium deal is going to include is something like a lot J, but on different lots. And
and it goes back to we talked about this at a previous thing, but you talked about Donna, that she communicates. That was the difference on what the Jaguars are doing, is that Mark Lamping and the Jaguars are going out there and talking with people as opposed to having it come off the 4th floor and having that. And we all talked. We all said to Mark, you're the front person. Go in there, just like Donna walked into, they have 8 or 9 of those community meetings. Mm-hmm.
Well, this person asked me, why would season ticket holders not vote for Lot J? And I said, because it was a lousy deal, and they love this city enough that they'll buy season tickets year after year after year, even when we're losing our shirts.
Well, there are and let me tell you, and it's on record, there are a number of developers who said, if that deal had been given to me, I'd be having downtown would look a lot different if they had offered me the deal on Lot J. Mm-hmm. If I could have had that kind of deal. So let's be consistent and let's be transparent.
Yes.
Okay. We got to wrap things up.
Yeah,
already? Yeah, I know.
I know.
I'm sitting here looking at the clock and saying, "Goodness gracious, where
Let
did
me
this time go?"
Before we
Go ahead,
Matthew. I've known you a long time, buddy, and I feel like a relative, and I appreciate you.
Thank you.
We all
appreciate
do.
that. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
We appreciate the fact is that you call balls and strike, and you love this city. Your family has always loved this city, and we appreciate your leadership.
And thank Karen for allowing you to show up today. Okay.
Let me tell you, God bless her, my little Italian pixie. Getting her to go with a 5th term, it wasn't easy. but my love of my life has always been one person, and that's Karen Signoretti Carlucci. Yeah. And I wish people could have known her dad as they knew my dad, because they were a lot alike, both Italians. But, there's things that my wife does for me I take for granted sometimes, and I have to stop and say, you know what, stupid, tell your wife how much you appreciate what she does here, there. She's very giving, she's very loving, and she's my best friend in life.
Well, Matt, come back and see us again.
And we appreciate your leadership.
We enjoy it.
Let's don't forget the Jacksonville Historical Society.
I was just going to say that. We want to thank, in fact, I had the pleasure of being with Allen Bliss yesterday, which was great at lunch. We had a nice discussion, and, of course, I thanked him profusely for his sponsorship of our show, and to the donors of the Historical Society for making this all happen. So, and I know you're close to Allen, so when you see him, if you see him before we do, please thank him again.
Let me tell you something. We've been real lucky. I know we're running out of time. But we had 25, 30 years of Emily Liska.
Mm-hmm.
What more? I mean, what a treasure.
Yeah, she was.
Yeah.
And then she gets followed up by Allen Bliss, who has been such a blessing and a treasure as well. He a little different style,
Yep.
but we've been lucky to have that leadership for so many years in the historical society. We have a wonderful history. Maybe we can come back and talk about that instead of
Love to.
damn politics and stuff.
Yeah,
You got
there
it.
you go.
All right.
Thank you all for joining us. We appreciate you, and we look forward to your comments as well. Find us, of course, on Facebook, on our website, which, by the way, is mikesonmike.com, or wherever you get your favorite podcast. And again, my thanks to my colleagues here, as well as our friend Matt Carlucci, and we'll see you next
And let
time.
me end by saying
Thank you.
I love you guys.
Thank you very
Appreciate
much.
it.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Mike's on Mike with Mike Hightower, Mike Tolbert, and Mike Miller can be found at your favorite podcasting platform, Facebook, and YouTube. Learn more at mikesonmike.com. Join us next time for more conversations with Mike's on Mike.